My name is David Stewart. I'm based in Washington, D.C. at Squire Patton Boggs. I've recently ended a 17-year service career in the Congress, most recently at the Committee on Ways and Means as the staff director for the majority under Chairman Kevin Brady, where we worked to get tax reform enacted through the Congress for the first time in 31 years. Before that as Speaker Boehner's policy director, where we worked on a number of free trade agreements. And now I've got the opportunity to bring all of that perspective and policy work to Squire Patton Boggs on behalf of clients around the world. I started as an intern for a member of the committee, actually from Pennsylvania, and then went off and did a variety of different policy roles, ultimately coming back as the staff director for the committee, which basically oversees a professional staff of 60 really dedicated, really professional policy people. And we work on a variety of topics. The remit at the Committee on Ways and Means is enormous. It is covering everything from Social Security and pension policies to health care across the economy, and of course has exclusive jurisdiction from the Constitution on taxation and international trade. So you can imagine we've been at the fulcrum of the public policy debate over the last decade, to be sure. And so my job at the committee is really to listen to the priorities of the members of the committee, the members of the Congress, and to develop ways to get strategic priorities through what is a very complicated system of government. And by and large, we've been very successful on all fronts, including, as I mentioned, tax reform for the first time in a generation just last year. So that's my work at the committee, and it's been really rewarding work. I don't think it's just the politics that have changed over time. I think it's the context in which politics operates. And I think that, there is a divisiveness that has encroached in the populace. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that, which we don't have time to cover here. But I do think that context has changed the way that politics has worked in the United States. And if anything, I think that what you see most on the surface level is a little bit less collegiality and a little bit more divisiveness. And what you see as a practical effect of that is that people aren't working across the aisle as early in the political process as possible. And so you have two very distinct examples of major legislation moving through the Congress to enactment, both under President Obama and now President Trump, that have been done entirely by party line. And I think that's a phenomenon that is very new and is very rare, but that's, I think, a symptom of what's been going on lately in politics. As I mentioned, I think it's exceedingly rare where you have something major going through the Congress on a partisan basis only. And tax reform is an example of that, but so is the Affordable Care Act with President Obama. But other than that, every major piece of legislation I've seen enacted in the United States Congress in the last 2 decades of my service has always been on a bipartisan basis. And that is based on not only the necessity of governing things, whether that's budget deals or appropriations to keep the government running, but also bipartisan opportunities to do things that other people might think were impossible. And an example of that is reforming the way that the Congress decided we should be paying doctors and physicians under the Medicare program based on value rather than on the frequency of care. So it's changed a lot, but that's a long way of saying I don't think it's changed much at all when it comes to actually getting big things through the Congress, because at the end of the day, whether it's trade agreements, budget agreements, or appropriations, typically that's going to be a bipartisan coalition. I think a lot of the focus in Washington tends to be about the negative, about the dysfunction and the disorganization of the Congress and never getting anything done. The one thing I would like to impart to everybody about what Washington that I see day in and day out, both in my public service and now out of my public service, is that the professionals that are the public servants in Washington working for the Congress or the administration, they have impossible jobs. And they are all motivated, generally speaking, by the very same things. They came to Washington not to further their own careers, but to have a positive impact on their country and on their government. And that's the best part that I've always seen in Washington.